to a large number of people that are here tonight for this meeting, I'm going to dispense with the privilege of the floor. The floor is just a process where we would take comments from the public as to how they see us doing our job anyway to perhaps improve it. So we don't need to do that tonight. I'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the October meeting. All the board members had an opportunity to check out the minutes.
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion that has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Under old business, we have a public hearing for Mr. Clapp, who requests a special use permit in order to restore the Carleton Villa as a bed and breakfast and restaurant, along with a campground on the rear portion of the property. We'll call Mr. Clapp. We're going to call Mr. Clapp. We did not have the ability to do a Zoom. This is the closest we're going to get. So he will be able to hear what the speakers have to say, and you will be able to hear any comments that he may have.
Hello?
Right, Ron?
Yeah.
Hi, can everybody hear him?
Yep.
All right, I got you like on my phone and like on a speaker.
Okay, wonderful. I hear clicking. I'm not sure what that is, but.
I'm trying to turn up the volume maybe. Oh, I hope it doesn't die. I thought I charged it. Okay.
Under the rules for a public hearing, in general, the only people that speak at a public hearing are the contiguous neighbors of the property in question. However, since Carleton Island is such a unique feature, the board would be more than happy to, or the chairman, myself, would be more than happy to let all residents of Carleton Island that are here speak to the issue. We have a sign-in list, and who's the first one?
Did you open the public hearing yet?
Yeah, okay. The public hearing is now open. I got tangled up with him.
Yeah. Okay, Edward Kernan.
Thank you. Thank you, board members, for inviting us to speak on the proposal before you to renovate Carleton Villa into a restaurant and bed and breakfast, and also to build a campground / glampground on the neck of the island. My interest comes from my family having owned property on the head of Carleton Island since 1916, when my grandfather and great uncle bought the house right next door to the villa. My father bought the house second away from the villa in 1956, which I now jointly own with my 6 brothers and sisters. To this house, the family added a 3-acre property on the point on the head of the island in the 1970s. All 7 of us siblings, along with our families, spend much treasured time on the island every summer, spring, and fall. To this day, we have no TVs on the island and cherish our opportunity to step away from today's high-pressure world when we're on the island. It is my belief that those who bought lots from the developer Patton in the 1980s had similar desires. I base this belief on observing the new residents and talking with many of them over the last 35 years. Logic would also conclude this, because everything that we have on the island can be had both cheaper and easier on the mainland. It is my understanding that the Patton's deed covenants assured buyers back in the 1980s of a very low-density, quiet environment, which they and we cherish today. I believe that the proposal before you will destroy this quiet environment that we have enjoyed these many years. In closing, I would add to that until now, the island has required very little municipal service from the town of Cape Vincent. I think this will change drastically if this proposal goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One thing I'd like to mention before we continue on is all of the emails that we sent to the board are in the possession of the board members at this time. If you're going to speak and you're gonna read your email to me, I think that may be a waste of the public's time. The board members have read that. If you, and it is going to be part of the package that goes in with this request. All of those emails are included. It's like including them in the minutes almost.
If you want, I can tell you who I have emails from, if that will help. I have Christine and Adrian Martin, Todd Atkinson, Ian Golden, Michael Comerford, Stephen Sabo, Jim McQueenie, Carol Thomas, Jan McDonald, who is representing Philip and Yelena Argersinger, Lois and Sam Diember, Emily Waterman and Evan Farrell, Charles Miller, Julia and Nicholas Searles, William Kernan III, Maura Kernan, Michael and Jane Falvey, David Kernan, Andrew Bott and Christine Seaborg, Philip Oswald, representing the TI Land Trust, Kendra Bevan, Mark Kernan, Angela Kernan Whistler, Russell Whistler, Leanne and Steve Waterman, Catherine Kernan, and Carly Foster. Jana McDonald.
Jana McDonald.
Yes, and we do have stuff from you.
Right. Attorney with the law firm of Bruce Gable, Stevens offices at 110 West Fayette Street in City of Syracuse, representing Philip and Yelena Argersinger, owners of property on Carleton Island. We did submit objections by letter. I do want to highlight our procedural objections, that none of the members here were afforded the opportunity to appear virtually like the applicant has been allowed to appear. This really does implicate due process and equal protection. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these folks would have liked to have participated by Zoom, and instead they came out on a dark and stormy night. I do have questions for the applicant that I would like to pose to him that go directly to the nature of the application that's before you. So, Mr. Clapp, I can't see you, but I would like you to raise your right hand, please, and swear on the record that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes, I will.
Okay, so Mr. Clapp, for this bed and breakfast that you're requesting approval for, do you plan to live there at the premises? Excuse me?
Well, I have another home that's in Cape Vincent, but I don't know. I don't know that answer.
Okay, and how many lodgers do you anticipate at this bed and breakfast?
The bed and breakfast we currently have in our design approximately 12 bedrooms right now. So that would be, we'll call it approximate 24 people.
Okay, so where do the 150 people come from?
Because of the square footage that for the restaurant, because of and that's basically just building code number, and that's what I think. I read one of the articles, and that confused me as well. But basically, that's a maximum capacity. If you want to think of it as a fire marshal placard that's on a building that you enter, and it says maximum capacity. To my understanding, that's where that 150 person number comes from. It's because of the max capacity. It's not necessarily what we were planning to have. It's just what capacity is, and that's part of what the plan is to demonstrate.
Okay, so under the town zoning law, a bed and breakfast is limited to 10 transient lodgers, and the owner must reside on the premises. So this really isn't a bed and breakfast that you're requesting approval for. It's something different. So I would say to this board that the notice of public hearing is an error and the application is an error because they're requesting approval for a bed and breakfast. It's not a bed and breakfast. It's also two principal uses on one lot. It's the bed and breakfast, and it's the campground and the glam ground. Second procedural objection is until last Thursday, when this plan was posted on the website in a PDF form, it was completely illegible in all distributed forms. That's what it looked like to the public. That's the second procedural objection. Third procedural objection is until today, the EAF wasn't available and on file. It has errors and it's incomplete. It talks about, submitting it also to the record, it talks about disruption of, I think, 0.3 acres of land. It's really more about, I'd say, 3/4 or 2/3 of the property. Plus, that's not the right form. Seeker law has changed. There's a new form. Seeker on the DEC website requires the filing of a different form. Explains it here, it's highlighted. The form actually looks like this. And, right, but no action can be taken, right, until it's filled out, and it's a type 2 and go to the EAF.
Just for the record, we're not here to take action on it. As was explained to you early on, we're here to take information. We appreciate your information.
Okay. All right, so aside from the fact that, we don't, until this morning, really didn't have the privilege to look at the EAF, which would set out the full, information, if you will, about the anticipated impacts of this project, which then after that, you can do your impacts analysis. So you know what the effect is on the infrastructure and the rest of the island. We don't have that data. As far as I know, Mr. Clapp, has this application been supplemented in any way?
No, it has not, other than other pictures that were added to it, but that's, if that's what you're referring to.
Okay, so if you go down through the substantive standards, there's really no way to address the standards with the data that's in the record right now for the application. For instance, the nuisance law, the nuisance standards of review. We really don't know how many people will be out there, how many additional employees there will be, where they will park their cars, how many boats are anticipated to be delivering these folks, employees and the users of the project, what the level of intensity of the commercial use of the shorelines will be. We don't really have that information. In fact, for your website, Mr. Clapp, you say that the project involves a lot of things that we haven't thought of yet. Those things need to be brought out in the application right now.
To my understanding, they don't have to actually be part of the application at this point in time, but those are things that will come out as the permitting process goes through.
Well, for this board to make a decision, they have to talk about the nuisance and the capacity analysis, and they need to know about how construction activity will be managed. They need to know about the compatibility of the project, and that goes to the mitigation of the negative impact. So we need to know about what the impacts are going to be. The infrastructure, what will the needs for parking, police, and emergency medical services be? How are we going to mitigate the impacts that are so specially pointed out for the whole community in the village and town comprehensive plan, which talks about how this area is a very special area, that it's very low density residential, that's what the community wants it to stay like. The area is traditionally, has historic qualities. That's going to most likely change that in this to involve seeker review under type 1. And it's really, it's really not a compatible commercial activity. The fact that for almost 100 years ago, there might have been some limited commercial activity is beside the point, because now this island is developed as something different. The zoning code talks about limited and controlled activity, commercial activities, as long as it can be made compatible, but we don't have enough data and information to know about that right now. So on this basis, I believe this application should be denied, or at least, postponed for additional information to be submitted into the record. And again, going back to this procedural objection, my client got on a plane this morning at 3 a.m. to be here out of respect for this process, as did everybody else who came here, who flew or drove from long distances in the snow. So the fact that I would hope that the applicant at the next hearing would show up in person, also out of respect for this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just address that matter, just for her purposes and for the record. Unfortunately, my father just recently passed away, so my intent would have been to be there and to be present. I do find this project to be important to me, but I did need to be with my family in regards to this time. So, and I know that that's not, nobody necessarily knew about that other than some of the town clerk and the board members, but that is why I'm attending via the phone.
Who do we have next?
David Kernan.
Thank you. I'm Ed's brother. So as he said, we have 3 properties on the head of the island. A house that's 2 houses away from the villa, a couple acres on a point that is adjacent to the proposed campground, and a boathouse, which is near where the boat traffic will be coming in for the campground and the villa. And I would say that when Mr. Clapp acquired the villa, we were very excited. When he let us know his plans to turn it into a bed and breakfast, that seemed great to us because we'd love to see the villa restored. But the campground that he is proposing really is a totally separate project, a separate thing. I have looked, albeit by internet, throughout the Thousand Islands, and I cannot find a single campground in the Thousand Islands that is not accessible by automobile. This campground that is being proposed is only going to be accessible by boat. It's not explained whether all the users of the campground, there would be 46 to occupy 23 units, whether they're all going to come in their own boats or whether there's going to be a water taxi that brings them back and forth from the mainland. But as the people who live on the island know, there are risks as well as hardships in living on an island. You don't have immediate access to first responders. We have to rely on each other to help each other out in emergencies because there's no one else to do it. So here we have this campground with 46 or more people who have not necessarily evaluated the risks of being on an island away from civilization, as it were. They're going to be there with possible medical emergencies, with no access to first responders. And that group, that large number, is also going to be confined in this small space. We can imagine them partying, loud music, drinking, trespassing on our property, and all of the conflict that could bring about. And again, we want to call the police and say it's 2 o'clock in the morning and there's this music blasted. Well, we're not going to have any help there. Or if there's some kind of conflict over trespassing, we're not going to have any help there. It underscores how unsuitable the island is for this kind of operation. A final point I just want to make, so in studying the proposal, the map of the proposal, the head of the island is crisscrossed by roads. I guess you'd call them roads. They're dirt or gravel, but they've been there for over 100 years, and they are used by everyone to get to various places on the head of the island. On Mr. Clapp's map, they are obliterated. So he does not recognize the existence of these easements, or roads, if you will, that we need to get from one place to another. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's 3 island access campsites, south boundary.
Pardon me?
3. Yeah, New Point, Oak Island.
But these are places where you would go and pitch a tent.
Same thing with these are state-run islands too.
Right.
Yep,
And we don't have a state park on Carleton Island.
agreed.
And it's not like people who are backpackers who go to bring everything they need and they take a boat over and pitch a tent. This is where people are invited to come stay in cabins. I see a significant difference between those two kinds of operations.
I'm just waiting for the secretary to catch up.
I can only write so fast. And I'm trying to get everything, so. Maura Kearney.
I'll make this brief since I submitted a letter and as Karen pointed out, we're not reiterating everything that we outlined in our letter. I'm here on behalf of my cousins who are part of the younger generation who have spent multiple weeks of every spring and summer for all of us since we were born, so for me for the last 37 years on Carleton Island. This is truly the most special place in the world to me. And I have a 2-year-old son, and I hope that he is able to continue on and it becomes to him what it has been for me and my cousins, where we have been able to roam freely without any fear for our safety, and truly enjoying what this very, very special place in the world has to offer. And I think that this proposal really threatens that, especially the glampground, which, as I point out in my letter, really abuts right up next to our property and, just, I think, eradicates what is this refuge for our families and for the families from the body of the island to come down and use in this bay. There are some very serious safety concerns about this proposal, and I look forward to the board's adjudication of this.
Could you spell your name for me, please?
Yes, Maura.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Philip Argersinger.
Hi, my name is Philip Argersinger. I appreciate addressing the board. I'm here on behalf of my wife, Yelena, myself. I've been on the island for 25 years. I've lived on James Street here. I was a resident of Cape Vincent. My family's originally from the North Country. I realize the difficulties in building a commercial, thriving town in the North Country. It's very difficult because manufacturing leaves, we can see Ogdensburg, but seeing it, we know how it plays out. So I think it's important as a board that we do promote commercialization, but we don't do it at a cost where the return on the investment is not going to be sufficient for the town or the people around. So for example, if you're proposing this project as a bed and breakfast, which is really a hotel, but we'll call it a bed and breakfast, that's probably beyond restoration, but you're probably talking between $10 and $20 million. There's no ROI there. So that tells me there's a hidden agenda here. You don't have to be very intelligent not to see the hidden agenda. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start with maybe some campgrounds, add a little bit at a time, produce some income, but we never finish the project because there's no money to finish the project. If this project was so important to Mr. Clapp, he would have postponed the meeting. I flew from Florida. I owned a company in Syracuse. I arranged my schedule. I got on a plane at 3 o'clock this morning. I'm not making money off this project. But if I was, I would have postponed it based on losing his father, and I feel sorry for him. My condolences go out to him. But now let's get back to the town and the people in the town. The people in the town want to increase the tax base. You want more business coming into Aubrey's, more down at Bob's liquor store. All makes sense. But now, how are we going to do that? This was zoned residential with low impact. I own 109 acres out there. My density on that 109 acres is pretty intense. 3 people. Myself, my wife, and my son. And occasionally I invite my grandkids up, but that's more intense. So I try to keep that to the minimum. Because I'm going for peace and quiet. So now there's trails around the island. Every homeowner has the ability to access those trails. As a homeowner, legal access. Now, with that legal access, it's only as a homeowner, not as a commercial endeavor. So now we have 911 addresses because when I'm building a new home out there, and it's been getting inspected, and I'm playing by all the rules. And I think I'm on road number 2. And I remember when they changed, I don't even know my house number. I think it's 3629 or something like that. So when I go to get insurance, which is interesting, my exposure is so great out there, I have 2 insurance companies covering my property because of the cost. So now let's think about this from a business perspective, because we're gonna try to approve something. If in fact we approve this, you could never get financing because you can't underwrite it with insurance. There's not one insurance company that's ever gonna write that. I have 2, and they'll only take limited liability on part of it, and then the new house is on a whole separate company. They exclude the other, and the other one's on another one. So now I'm gonna try to insure something for $20 million with a villa that's falling in. They can go up to Fort Haldeman, fall off the cliff, because they're gonna have parties up there. And now you got the town where you're gonna have to have parking. We have no town parking. So now we're gonna impact the village. I've already talked to the village mayor, so he wasn't here, but it's gonna have to be at the next one, because where are they gonna park? They're gonna now infiltrate what we built down there with taxpayer money in order to bring people into town. Fishing, it's working. Now we're gonna load it up with people to benefit one individual. That doesn't benefit the town. We have medical emergency, we have none. We have 911 roads. So now, those 911 roads, they are a town road. Do you want to bring them up to legal standards? Do you know the cost of that? I go around with my own heavy equipment, I clean that trail. I got $500,000 worth of equipment out there. You know who pays me for that? In the neighborhood, anybody pay me? No one pays me. I do it on my own. Maybe once in a while I stop by, they give me a beer. So now you're talking having to get access. So we need a fireboat. So now when the people light the island on fire, it gets into the center for the indigenous trees, how are you gonna fight it? Now we have to have the ability of a truck to get into and around the island. You can't physically pass through there, it's only 4-wheelers. So there is no ROI here. This is smoke and mirrors. If it was that important to make that much revenue, he would be here. And you would never get a company to insure it, which means they won't finance it. It's never gonna be completed. That's not what the town wants. I think once you do that, you now take every residential property and I can make it commercial. So I'm gonna take my 109 acres, I'm gonna make it commercial. I think I'm gonna do condo complexes. High density. Maybe I'm gonna bring the immigrants in. Make it a safe haven. I'm not doing that. I live in Florida. So I believe in the values of Florida. So I would highly suggest you look at the merit. I made an investment in a firm. Not to come out here and say I'm gonna sue the town, to set the precedence that this isn't correct. I'm spending money to save others. I would highly suggest you do the same to protect the village and the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you please, is it Philip with 2 L's or 1?
Well, one out.
And can you spell your last name?
Sure. ARGERSINGER.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next I have James
Yep,
Oliver?
yep.
Is that
So
Oliver?
also, 20 years, well, thank you so much for holding this and allowing me to address it. I really concur with Philip and both Mr. Curran and his brother. I don't have a TV on the island. I've been there also about 2003. I guess I don't want to be repetitive, but I would guess I would ask a question or encourage this whole board to when does last time they were on Carleton Island to really take a drive around, and I would say that this this should be postponed until each and every one of you have a chance to go out there and actually see the place rather than looking at it from afar. And I think one of the biggest concerns is, you know, when you get, something happens here, they come and they put you on an ambulance. On Carleton Island, they put you on a four-wheeler or a side-by-side, and hopefully you get to the boat. So I think the concern, one of the biggest concerns is the health and safety of the people that are gonna be using these campgrounds or campgrounds or whatever, and how they're gonna be able to provide that kind of service, and is it gonna be an economical benefit for the town to provide that? That's really all I have to say, thank you.
Thank you.
I have Carol Thomas.
Thank you for letting us speak tonight. Phil did just give me a great idea. I've owned on Carleton since 1992, and I own Angel Rock Cottages since 1997, and maybe we ought to do Angel Rock North over there on the end of the island. I think my neighbors would despise me.
I like the safe haven part, trying to get them out of the city, put them on the island.
But I'm really here only to say, I have a list of correspondence that's people who could not be here tonight gave me now. Some of the names were read of emails sent and some weren't. So I simply want to, the 26 writers I have in this list, most of whom were unable to attend, requested that I provide you with copies of their correspondence to help ensure that their voices are being heard regarding the special permit application. And there's a list of names which I need not read because I'm going to submit this to make sure that you do have all these letters. And thank you on their behalf and my own for taking our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Williams is the last name? I'm sorry, I can't read the first name.
Hi, my name is Vincent Williams,
Vincent.
and
Okay.
we own property on Carleton Island for 25 years as well. And I don't want to reiterate pretty much what everybody's talked about here as well, because I'm on board with everybody being against this project. I lost a finger on Carleton Island. It took me 2 hours to get to the hospital. It's, you know, the number of people in this meeting here should tell everybody that this thing definitely needs to be slowed down and really looked at. The folks that have talked so far, Carl, Phil, and the Kiernans here, and you know, the objections to the legal aspects of this project are something that we really need to look at as a group and as a town. I don't see it. I agree with Phil completely. It's not a moneymaker. And so me and my wife, and here with my sister Dawn and her son Cole, we are 100% against this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Vincent Williams' wife.
Annie Kiernan?
No, I'm Williams.
Oh, Williams, okay, I'm sorry.
What's your first name?
Trianka, the one you couldn't read.
Oh, how do you spell that?
T-R-A-J-A-N-K-A.
T-R-A-J.
A-N-K-A.
A-N-K-A. T-R-A-J-A-N-K-A.
Yes.
Okay, want to make sure I had it right.
So, good evening, and I just want to say that I think Mr. Clapp painted a beautiful picture to restore the villa and make it a bed and breakfast, but I think he had, a hidden agenda to build these cabins, whether it's 20, 30, whatever it is. You take 20, a couple, it's 40, they have a couple of kids, the kids bring a friend, mother-in-law comes, this person comes, so we're talking about a ton of people on the island. My husband had an accident he almost lost his life, bled to death. There was no one to come. There was no ambulance. We couldn't. It was awful. It was just a horrible experience. In any event, my 15-year-old son got in the boat and brought him to shore to save his life, only to find out that there's no ambulance there waiting for him. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you take all these people, they're building fires, they have their kids, they get on ATVs, and they've probably never even driven an ATV. There's trees, there's so many hazards out there as far as fire and safety. We've protected the island. We have very strict rules and guidelines. We all look after each other. And I think you have to take into consideration crime is going to be a huge, huge thing. Trespassing. I guess that's it. So I'm not for this.
Thank you. We have Annie Kieran.
Ann Kearney.
Ann.
Yes.
Looks like an I on the end.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm a sister to Ed and David. And I'm also a property owner over there. And I think, yes, I live in Cape Vincent. I vote in Cape Vincent. I'm a Cape Vincent resident and have been since 1983. But I've been a resident over at Carleton Island since 1956. And I guess my big concern, without going into a whole lot, is that to see a residential area suddenly become commercial. And all that's gonna mean to the residents that are there. You know, I mean, this butts up right against our property, right against where we have, you know, small children going to the bay. You're talking all kinds of extra people. And like they said, there's gonna be partying, there's gonna be all kinds of things going on that, you know, people that go to an island go there because they want quiet. And if they're gonna want people to come, they invite them. But to make it a state park almost is what Mr. Clapp is kind of doing. It's not meant to be a state park. And it's a historical place too, but it's like, I wanna see Cape Vincent prosper. And I understand you're looking for ways to bring in more revenue. But I don't think Carleton Island is really the place to start.
Thank you. I know you're right. Michael Avery.
Thanks for giving me a minute to go before the board, appreciate it. I'm a local village resident, don't own a home here, but I do manage our family home of over 50, well, this particular home is 50 years, but our family's been here for that long. So I've been very excited to see that Ron is taking that investment up and decided to try to do something with it. I get where he's coming from. The house that I'm in is the former doctor's home of the village. It takes some money to keep it running. My idea was Airbnb is a perfect solution to help me do that. So to his defense, it's gonna take something to help him generate some kind of revenue to try to improve the village. But maybe we should reconsider, or maybe he should, his aspirations. And maybe a quality circle meeting would be better to start that process of trying to come up with solutions to problems, not just problems. Thank you, that's all I'm here.
Thank you. Okay. John Peach. I know you're with Save the River, but do you have property on Carleton Island?
No. We have, let's see, we have 1,400 members from all around the river.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board tonight. I'm John Peach, the Executive Director of Save the River. Save the River's mission is to restore, preserve, and protect the upper St. Lawrence River now and for generations to come through advocacy, education, research, and stewardship. Save the River has been advocating for effective sewage treatment along the river for many years through its Kingfisher septic tank testing program and support of community sewer system updates. Save the River is very concerned about the environmental impact to the river of an inadequate sewage treatment facility. The Carleton Island proposal lists 46 occupants for the 6.9 acre campground site at any given time that the site is operating. Any untreated sewage runoff from the site will flow directly into the river, polluting the waters that should remain swimmable, drinkable, and fishable. The special use permit should not be considered prior to an adequate sewage plant being presented to address the concerns about the high concentration being proposed.
Sir, are you reading me your email?
Yes, sir, but you didn't mention my email.
Well, we do have it.
Yeah, it was just received today, and that's why it wasn't probably on the list. Excuse me.
That one I didn't catch.
Yes, like I said, we just got it. Excuse me.
I'll let you finish.
Thank you.
Just don't go into the stats.
New construction should require the New York State Department of Health approval for plans drawn up following the New York State DEC regulations. According to the designer of the New York State septic systems, this action will require a specific waiver if they're not 100 feet from the river, 4 feet above bedrock, or 24 inches above the seasonal high water table. The overlying soil on the island is thin and not suited to handle the sewage that would be generated by the number of families using basic sewage systems. Save the River urges the planning and zoning boards to place a moratorium on commercial construction on Carleton Island until all questions and concerns raised by the community on this project have been satisfactorily answered. Thank you.
Thank you. You all set? Spencer Bustler?
Good evening, my name is Spencer Bustler. I'm the Assistant Director for the Thousand Islands Land Trust. I'm here with Ken Nims, who's our Stewardship Director. Thank you for the allotted time. We're here this evening on behalf of TILT to request a minimum 60-day adjournment on this hearing. As many of you know, TILT holds the conservation easements on Carleton Island. This includes a shoreline buffer easement, a forest preserve easement or a forest buffer easement, a declaration of restrictions, and an Indian burial ground easement. 37 years ago, TILT was entrusted to uphold the terms and conditions of these conservation easements for the betterment of the public and the municipality of Cape Vincent. And that's our legal obligation. The proposed use, as presented, would likely violate specific provisions of the shoreline buffer easement. We have made Mr. Clapp, the applicant, aware of the situation, and so a 60-day adjournment of this hearing would allow TILT to have the necessary communications with the applicant to resolve these issues and to allow us to completely review the restrictions impacting this subject property. In addition to the conservation easements, TILT is the adjoining landowner with the Fort Haldeman Preserve. This is the area that has been deemed as one of the most historically notable areas in northern New York. The Revolutionary Fort and its surroundings hold substantial archaeological and cultural resources, and we fear that the proposed campground would significantly degrade these resources and may even result in unauthorized access to the fort and the island proper. We respectfully urge the board to seek a minimum 60-day adjournment of this hearing. We believe this to be both reasonable and appropriate in a great measure to ensure the adequate protection of the important historical archaeological resource, Fort Haldeman, And that is a quote from the Cape Vincent Joint Comprehensive Plan. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Alec Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Alec Johnson. I'm here on behalf of the owners of property 3089 Carleton Island Road 1. I'm not going to read my email, but I think it was in a little bit late, so I will submit it. We were excited when Mr. Clapp came out and purchased the villa. We've quite literally seen it falling down for many years and done some measurements to see if the chimney might hit our guest house if it were to fall over. So as an adjoining property owner, we were thrilled to see that investment in the island, but it was a surprise to us about the campground that's been proposed. We are quite adjacent on both sides, the campground and the villa, so I think if there's any property on the island that would be impacted the greatest, it would be ours. We've been on the island since the 1950s, members of our group, for some of the currents, though we don't all share the same last name. We're a group of friends that collectively own the property. I spend the summer, a great deal of the summer with my two little children out there, and it's become the place that they actually refer to as their home. They keep asking when they can go back. They don't understand that it's closed for the season. Carleton Island is a great example of development. The Patton's development of Carleton Island drew the community together at a time when there could have been great conflict. I think this was 30 years ago, but I think it serves as the definition of the island district. The deed restrictions memorialize the safety of the properties throughout the island, and we should look very closely at that definition of island district and whether this fits into it. Charles Miller wrote an excellent letter pointing out the specifics of that you have, and I would refer you to those specifics. So with that, we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us, and I'll submit this to the record.
Thank you. Is the engineer for the project here? I see your chart. I have a question for you. I was looking at the chart, map, and it says it's a 1 to 50 scale, 1 inch is 50 feet, but it says not to measure it because it may not be accurate. If you look at the zoning law for the island, there's a required 200-foot setback from the front, and looking at that map, I don't see anything in there that does the 200 feet.
Yeah, I was made aware of that today too. We didn't do the master plan. I'm the architect working on the villa restoration. This was done by the Naughty Group, not a town landscape architect. So,
What's your name, sir?
Brian Jones with Opportunity Courier.
I'm sorry, was that Ryan or
Brian?
With Albertine and Couriers at least?
Yep.
Well, based on that, the board's gonna have to do a little research as to where these buildings actually are gonna be proposed, if we can't use that for a guide. Any other board members have any comments?
Well, if we're done with our public input at this point, my recommendation would be, yes, sir.
There's still just another list. There's still 2 more names on that list that we.
Okay.
Where'd you put them? Oh, on the back. Mr. Smith.
May I approach? I'd like to give you a copy of my comments to follow along, if that's all right.
Sure.
This also might make it a little easier on the secretary in terms of the marathon note taking here.
Thank you.
Could you announce who he was? We couldn't hear it in the back.
Brody Smith.
He's with Bond, Sheddick, and King, which is a law firm in Syracuse.
Okay, thank you.
So I won't read that letter at you, but let me hit some highlights that I think are relevant. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak, even though I was in the back. I represent Jim McQueenie. He owns a 56-acre lot on Carleton Island. And the reason that I'm primarily speaking, I know that you expressed earlier that it was not your intention to take a vote tonight, but I do want to offer as much constructive information as we can about process to aid the board in this application going forward, with some suggestions that I think are relevant. So I think you just alluded to, there were some discussions that we had today about, looking at the code and the setbacks. At the bottom of the first page, I talked about the zoning. If you look at section 3.7 of your code, that's where you have your 200-foot setback that we talked about. In the second page, what I did is I took that map, and if you look at the second page of the letter, I drew red lines on their 100-foot setback. Those red lines show you, they put that in there for the easement, but those show you what 100 feet look like. If you extrapolate another 100 feet in, that building envelope collapses. I don't think they can build any of the safari tents or the cabins in that location and comply with the code. So therefore, in order for this board to even be entertaining this, they would need to submit an application for some pretty substantial, maybe unprecedented in the town area variances. And what's the first factor? Because you know better than us, the first factor that you consider when you consider area variances, is it consistent with the character of the neighborhood? So there's a lot of people in this room behind me that told you a lot about the character of the island. I don't think any of them said that this is consistent with the character of this island. So that's something that you have to consider. And that's a tough application. I also included in the letter right below the map, that's the table that shows you that it is a 200-foot setback from the water. Now, reading it, I included also the definition of how you measure that front setback. And where there's waterfront property, you measure it from the water, not from the road, from the front yard. And that's why they're getting pinched on both sides. But it's important, right? You don't privilege one waterfront to the other because people live on those. It's meant to protect the waterfront. It's meant to protect the boaters' experience and all those things. So I think that's a real challenge for this application in this present form. As a concept, that concept may need to evolve to go forward. The other thing that I want to talk about is you go deeper into the letter is seeker. Now, this board, I know this isn't your day-to-day, and it can be very intimidating when you have a big commercial project and that's not your normal applications that you deal with, because they're asking you to make all sorts of decisions without giving you the information. How could you possibly evaluate those? Well, they should be giving you more information, right? I think it is advisable, and it is certainly within your discretion to require them to submit a full environmental assessment form, which would provide you with a lot more information about the land they would disturb and potential environmental impacts than the short form. So I think that would be a very reasonable thing as an adjudicatory board to go back to the applicant and say, give me a full EAF. This is a significant commercial project. This isn't a farmer that's subdividing his property so he can build one more house. This isn't a simple subdivision, right? This is a significant project that warrants that additional detail that should be provided. For example, I'm not an engineer, but I can use the DEC environmental mapper. You go on the environmental mapper to start, which they would have to do to give you that EAF, and then the map I showed you, you click on the lot, it comes up, there's 3 different potential endangered species there. Does that mean you can never build anything there? No. Does that mean you need a biologist to give you some information, a study about whether the proposed project in its current form would be compatible? Yeah, that's something you need to do, right? Did they tell you needed to do that? No, they didn't. So I think it would be reasonable for you to require them to do FEAF. It is reasonable for you to require them to give you the information you need to intelligently evaluate these projects instead of just reacting to a glossy colored map, right? That's not fair to you. So what else should you be asking for? Well, right now, in addition to the renovations of the villa and the bathhouse, which is going to serve 25 of these cabins and safari tents, there's sort of a vague reference that we'll need to do a septic field. There's no space for a septic field adequate to serve any of those things the way that they have it configured. right? Now, sometimes the developers ask for all they want and hope they get half of it, maybe, but this is not, it's also your job to push back, right? There's no space for septic. Now, if there's money, is there a way? Yeah, maybe. Maybe they could do treatment, maybe they could do a tank, but they haven't told you what it is they intend to do. They have to design it. They have to show you where it's gonna be in the map, so you can intelligently decide whether that's reasonable, whether that's fair to the neighbors, whether that's gonna protect the environment. Because you're gonna be the lead agency, you have to make that initial decision under seeker. What else should they be talking to you about? Well, this location is a pristine island in the St. Lawrence River, where a lot of people go to vacation, a lot of people have seasonal homes. One of the things you have front yard setbacks for is to protect the visual integrity of the shoreline. They're gonna build 25 cabins and safari tents in this area that's only ever had single-family homes and vacation houses on these single lots. I think it's fair to ask them for some visual simulations. I think it's fair to ask them for a landscaping plan that talks about screening from the neighbors. People live right across the property line from what's gonna be a business. There's none of that. There should be a landscaping plan, there should be a drainage plan, there should be some visual simulations. People are gonna be walking around this vacation resort, there's gonna be lighting. There's no photometric study, so you don't know. How would you know? It's not fair to you. How would you know if the light's gonna diminish the experience of the neighbors and the character of the neighborhood? They never figured it out. You should require them to do a photometric study at a minimum, so you can tell how much light's gonna be bleeding over the property lines into other people's houses, yards, that kind of thing. Now, the preservation of the character of the villa is important. I think almost uniformly, everybody behind me is thrilled that they're gonna fix the old villa building. But it's also worth knowing how they're gonna fix it, right? This is clearly a historic building. It's not a blank check. If you're granting a special permit, remember what a special permit is. If someone has the right to do something in a zoning code by right, they can just do it. They don't need to come to the zoning board for a special permit. They get site plan review from the planning board and that's it. But a special permit, the reason the law exists is it is a use that could occur in that location, but it's up to your discretion to decide in that particular instance if it should. So the level of information needs to meet the level of discretion that you have to say no or to condition it. So you're entitled to more detailed plans as to what their plans are for the villa and what way they intend to alter it or not. With regards to the special use permit standards of review, you can condition any approval you do decide to give. And it's really important we have a phased project to make those conditions reflect your vision for the approval that you're given. If someone says, I want to fix up the villa, and I also want to have this campground, and it's a phased approach, and they built the campground and they say, ah, shucks, you know, I don't want to do the villa now. I ran out of money. We're not going to do it. If you don't have in your conditions that the certificate of occupancy is conditioned on completion of all the phases by a date certain, then you're in, there's a possibility that you could be taken in, is the best way I can put it, right? You dangle the thing that everybody wants, and then they do the part they want to do, and it's too late if you don't condition it specifically. And if you condition it specifically and strongly, then everyone's on the same page, and everybody knows what has to happen. If it doesn't happen, the campground would close, right? If you have a phased approach, phase 2 must be completed by a certain date, and if it's not, no campground. It's gotta be that explicit. It's gotta be, because that's the part that is really not, again, not fair to the town, not fair to you, to say one thing and then do another. Also, I've listed a bunch of studies that ought to be done, right? There needs to be a stormwater pollution prevention plan. This is on the river. They're gonna do a lot of construction on the river, so they need to, plan for and address erosion. There needs to be a light study. It looks like there needs to be an endangered species study. you're all looking at me like, I don't know if I want to read all these studies. Well, what do planning boards do in this situation to comply with seeker, to comply with your obligations under your special use permit standards? You have the right to have an engineer read them and give you advice. Have an attorney read them and give you advice. Well, I hear your thoughts. Why should we be using taxpayer money for that? You shouldn't. It is very common in nearly every place in upstate New York to require developers to escrow money for you to hire an engineer of your choice, to have your town attorney use those funds to then review the studies that you require these people to produce, because they're going to build they propose to build a high-intensity, high-density commercial use in the middle of an island. It's only ever been woods and vacation homes up to this point in the middle of a river, which is the jewel of the economy of this region and its character. You are entitled to have people, to have engineers and consultants of your choosing to review that information and tell you if it's adequate, if it protects the character of this island, if it protects the environment. That's what seeker gives you the power to do. Your code is good. Your town has a good zoning code. It gives you the protection. It gives you the ability to do these things. You just have to choose to do them. Finally, I want to thank you. I think that a lot of people a week ago were worried that this was going to be it. There was going to be a meeting tonight, and there was going to be an up or down, and people didn't know what was going to happen to their homes. And how they love so much. I think that by saying that this is going to be a longer process, you've done a great credit to this community. And I hope that some of these suggestions that I've given today is going to help give you the ability to make the most of that process in terms of what you ask the developer to do. So you get some honest responses and you get some realistic expectations about what happens next. And then once we have all that information, I think the attorney that spoke first, Ms. McDonald, was right. There's a sort of frustration and fear because there's nothing to react to. Once all those things are in, then you have something to react to. And you have something you can intelligently make a decision about. And you should require the developer to do that. Thank you.
Thank Dawn,
I can't add anything to the wonderful points that everyone has made to protect the character of Carleton Island. We've all grown up there. We've shared the island with our families, and we all appreciate the advice from the attorneys helping or recommending a lot more information coming forward from this developer. And I yield my time back to the floor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, due to the seriousness and the gravity and the sizes of this project, this is just the first step. This is just the first step in the application process. I'd like to delay this. I cannot close the public hearing, but I would like to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the public hearing. I talked to the town lawyer, who says perfectly appropriate to do such. And I would like to reconvene this at our next meeting after we've had an opportunity to take care of or look at all of these suggestions that have been made in the process. There's been a lot of things brought up that, quite truthfully, I never even imagined, like the endangered species. Never gave it a thought. I would be interested in a motion to adjourn and reconvene.
I'll make a motion.
And leave the public hearing open. I cannot close the public hearing.
Second.
Craig motion and.
Yep, Craig and Darrell. All right, I'll take a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. We will reconvene. New Year's Eve is, or New Year's is messing with us this year. It falls on the first Monday. So it would be January 8th at 1800 here. So that takes care of the public hearing portion of the business. We have no new business, no other applications to take a look at. And I'll ask the board members if they have anything for the good of the board. Any comments to be made, any statements?
So moved.
I have a motion to adjourn, and I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried, we will adjourn. Thank you all for your interest.